So, Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure to get you on the show, especially after our first proper chat on Wednesday, which generally was really got the creative juices flowing. I've been looking forward to this because it almost seems like you came on the scene out of nowhere. And I know that's never true. Overnight successes are normally 20 years in the making. But your content seems very authentic, very, very high quality, and very, very actionable, which is obviously some of the stuff that we're going to go into today. So for people who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about an intro of who you are and what you do.
Okay. How far back do you want me to go? We can go back to 2 years ago, or we can go back to the very beginning, just as I was sort of going into the self-employed world and my processes through that.
You can go on as a longer journey and story as you want that you feel is relevant. If you want to go back to start, I'm happy to hear it.
I mean, technically the start is relevant, so I'll go back there. So I'll skip past uni because that doesn't really have any relevance. But I became a PT sort of after university. So I would say, how old would I have been? I went to university a little bit later than everyone else. So I probably would have been like 22, 23. And just started that process as everyone does. You start getting your qualifications, you start further education by doing courses and so on and so forth. And I was just going through that process. I was working also part-time at the gym, because obviously when you initially start out, you haven't got enough clients to fully support yourself. So there was no online coaching or any of that. It was one-to-one clients working in the gym. That was like my model.
I remember in that exact same point where I was still getting to the point where my overdraft limit was getting hit on a monthly basis when I was going out for drinks. And I worked as Virgin Active throughout the day hunting for clients. Then in night, I worked for Reese outside nightclubs trying to get people in with cheap Lamborghini. And then I was doing butlering for Hindus, you know, the sort, on the weekends, just to make ends meet. So I very much know the pain of that kind of routine.
It's do everything. And I also still had that like student overdraft where it was like a ridiculous, it shouldn't be allowed kind of overdraft, where I was just like going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then you come out a little bit and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And you just get in that cycle. But it's all part and parcel of it, and you live and you learn. And then I was sort of just posting on social media because that's, in my mind, how I envisioned marketing my business. It wasn't flyers around the local area, that sort of thing. It was putting myself out on social media, putting out educational content, and trying to teach people how to do things. So that's literally how I started. And why would you do a dumbbell chest press instead of a chest press, like a machine chest press? Like simple educational social media content, and I was just putting it out on my Instagram page. That was it. Like myth busting with regards to nutritional stuff, all that sort of stuff. And I was doing that more and more and more and more, and I was really getting into it. Like I was really enjoying the process of making the content. And one of my very first clients was a videographer, and we spent our entire time when I was training him talking about cameras, talking about gear, talking about microphones, talking about lighting. We would never really talk about training at all. I would train him, but that wasn't the topic of conversation. And the more and more we talked about it, and the more and more I created content on my own page, the more I was like, I'm really enjoying this making content stuff. Maybe there's something here. Maybe I need to take a little bit of a different direction here. So I said to my client, do you mind if I come shadow you one day on a job to see what like the ins and outs of it is like? Do you mind? He's like, no, go for it. Like I always need a spare pair of hands. So that's what I did. I helped him out. I literally just pretty much stood behind the scenes and watched how it worked, how he handled the clients, how he went through the processes. And we were just talking back and forth. And I was like, I think there's something in this. And around about the exact same time was when Callum Raystrick and Luke Hoffman sort of collaborated, and they needed content for their social media. And they knew that I made content for my own channel. So they're like, do you mind making a video for us? I was like, sure, go for it. I had no idea what I was doing. I just whacked, like my camera, everything was in auto. And I was like, I'll just hit record and hope for the best. And that's what I did. I just hit record and hope for the best. They posted that on their social media. And then before you know it, other people were like, can you make a video for me? And I was like, sure. And they were like, how much charge? I was like, I don't know, like 50 quid. And they're like, yeah, sure, deal. And I was like, cool, we'll go with that then. And it kind of just snowballed from there. My like initial curiosity and sort of Cal and Luke sort of giving me an opportunity, it just took off. And then I did a little bit of work for Vanquish Fitness. I worked with them part-time, but I knew I didn't want to be employed. So I stayed part-time and just carried on building the videography business to a point where I actually went all in self-employed as a videographer was it just before lockdown? I think it was just before lockdown, or like after the second lockdown, where I was like, I'm gonna go all in on this. And I did. I went all in it and just grew the business from there. I wouldn't say there was a turning point at any point. It was just word of mouth. This client referred me to this client referred to me to this client. And I just started doing more and more and more. And it was all social media content. It was YouTube, it was Instagram, it was for creators who maybe had sponsorships and they needed like a mini ad making. It was all of that style of content. And yeah, that's sort of like that journey up until about a year ago, I'd say.
Okay. And what is it that, because this is an interesting topic for like off topic of content, but interesting for coaches in general, because some people are self-employed because that's the way they always have this entrepreneurial spirit and they want to be this online coach and this megastar or grow a gym. But I do think there's an element of coaches that really don't like that part of the business and would just like to train clients. Mm-hmm. And there's no one out there really to cater to them. So what was it about you that you knew that you didn't want to be employed? Why was self-employment the way for you?
I have just been very much that kind of person where my way is the right way and I don't like being told what to do. So that is literally it in pretty much a nutshell. Like I remember I used to work in Top Man, the retail store. And I remember little things like we used to have systems on when a delivery comes in, you do this, then you do this and you do this. And I was like, I don't like that. I don't like the way you do it. I want to do it the way I do it. So I created my own system and then I would get told off for doing my own system, even though I thought it was more efficient. I was like, this works better. They're like, no, do it our way. I was like, okay. So it was purely out of just stubbornness and I just don't like being told what to do. I was like, being employed isn't for me.
I'm very envious in a way that you managed to figure that out about yourself like early on. Like for me, I spent loads of years in employment, and while like I'm certainly not going to go down the issues of moaning about things that I used to work for, but I look back and I go, how much of that is just me wanting to do it my way? Yeah. And I stayed in it for such a long time, becoming more and more bitter and more angry. And realistically, I should have just taken a leap a long time ago, which says a lot about yourself to have that bravery from the start to go, yeah, that's absolutely what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't really. Yeah, I don't know where it came from because no one in my family is like that. It's not like I've got like an entrepreneurial family or anything. So I'm not really sure where that trait comes from, but yeah, I've always known that I just want to do my own. I think it's because I'm very curious. Like if I find something, I'm like, I wonder how that works, or I wonder why that happens, and I like to just explore my own curiosity. And I feel like if I was employed, I wouldn't have been allowed to do that. It's sort of like, no, just do what we're telling you to do. Don't go do that thing. Like, just do what we tell. Whereas I just go off on tangents. And when there's a fork in the road, I go that way, but then I'll come back and then go back the other way. Like, I just want to know all the ins and outs.
Do you think that curiosity serves you well? Obviously, early on, that was the drive to being self-employed. But now you're somewhat established in what you do. Do you think that curiosity is serving you? Or are you always looking for a better way to do things, which sometimes makes you less satisfied in what your current systems?
I think it's more beneficial than it isn't. I think my curiosity is shown in so many different ways with regards to my content, the way that I run my business, and I explore that curiosity. So like my number one thing with like advice with people with content is when people say, should I do this? Should I do that? I'm like, try it, find out, see if it works. There's no like written rules. There's no written method of what works and what doesn't with content. It's more trying to find something that works for you. And the only way you're going to find that is just posting different things and being curious with your content. So in that respect, I think it works. I think the only time it doesn't work, and I actually had a very brief conversation with my mentor today, was sometimes I doubt myself because I'm curious, I'm trying different methods. I doubt whether that was the right decision to make, and then I get my own little head a little bit. But the course can quickly like go back on track. I just need someone's confidence, like externally, to be like, no, that is the right thing. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, and I'll just carry on doing the thing that I was doing.
I think the difference, and this is from my experience with exactly that same feeling. I think the difference is being really dialed into what you want to do. Like you found something you enjoyed, and and we'll come on to maybe a breaking point in that in a little bit, but like almost being unwavering from then until now, maybe the thing that means you can come back on track. Like I know for most of my career, I was a coach for 13 years and I loved it and I was good at it, but I always clicked with mentoring coaches and working with those guys. And because it was me 5 years ago, it's the old adage of work with people like yourself and the problems you faced. So when I was working with like Susie from Slough, I couldn't, especially online, I couldn't relate to her pain points and problems because I'd never been Susie from Slough. So I was always in this mindset with my business of, yeah, but that guy's doing it better. That guy's results are good. Why am I getting this? And yes, there's an Instagram filter on life with these people. But now when I'm really dialed into who I want to work with, my product I know helps the people I want to work with, that even that curiosity of, okay, this system could be better, I'm much better at identifying, that could be fitted into what I'm currently doing, rather than being, I'm doing it wrong, I should go another way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think my mindset has actually been slightly different to that, whereby when I see someone doing something that in the position that I want to be in, maybe they've been doing it for longer and they're in the established position that I personally want to be in right now. I don't look at that as sort of an envy and be like, like I wish I was in that position. My immediate thought is, how did I get there? And I'll go back through like their old content and I'll retrace their steps and I'll be like, right, so you did that, then you did that, then you did that, then you did that. And I'll just try and find a way to follow their footsteps. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It takes you on a weird path. But again, that's where that curiosity kicks in, where I'm not like envious and being like, oh, I wish I was where you are. I'm like, how did you get there? And then I just retrace those steps.
Do you think the length of time you've sort of been doing this behind the scenes, almost like being the hidden videographer behind the names, allows you to take that viewpoint? Because I sometimes think looking at people now is like, because there's a while when I was thinking, do I go all in on this mentoring thing? I've been doing it behind the scenes for 8 years in private at some of these big companies. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to compete with the Jordan Shallows of this world, or the Muscle Mentors of this world, or the Michael Gordons of this world. And I had a conversation with Michael Goulden, and he went, if you need help with the camera setup and the rig and presenting, let me know. And I went, do you know what? There's millions of PTs out there. These people I look at as competition are actually people that can help me get to where I want to be, because there's more than enough business for everybody. And I suppose you, having done this for a while behind the scenes, it's a long game. There's plenty of people that want video content, and some are going to resonate with you, some people resonate with them. That you can look at this as a long game and go, right, they've done something right, let's look at this, rather than being in a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, and I think I've almost, when working with those people, I have like the bird's eye view the whole time. Like they're very much in it doing the thing, whereas I am literally viewing it, quite literally viewing it through a lens when I'm filming them. And I can kind of see the surroundings and everything that's going on at the same time, whereas they're sort of just in it doing the thing. So I think I've learned a lot from those people along the way, especially when it's like the bigger creators. I've had a very deep insight into how they approach everything, and that's had like a heavy influence on the stuff that I do now and how I go about that process. I think I almost have like a little bit of a head start because I have been surrounded by those people for the last like 8 years, something along those lines.
Yeah. So you mentioned this a lot in your content. Why is it that you have an unfair advantage?
I'd say my unfair advantage is my business right now is based upon coaching people on how to level up their content, create better content. And I have been doing that for the last 8 years. I just haven't been posting on my own page. I've just been doing it for other people. So I've been learning with these other people, okay, how can we get maximal attention on this part of this video? What can we do here which might work well for that brand? Like I remember when a really good learning curve for me was when I worked for Matt Does Fitness on his YouTube channel for, I think we worked together for about a year. And obviously his videos, it's very much attention driven. The goal was to stay on the video for as long as humanly possible. So how can we get them excited at the start? How can we tell the story? What can we put here? What can we put there? And the process to make his video was like days and days and days. Like it wasn't a couple of hours. It was days of work. Like we would film for an entire day. I would get there at like 9 a.m. We'd finish by like 6 p.m. So one video would take an entire day to film. And then it would take like 3 days to edit that. So I think I've had a behind the scenes look of how to make this attention grabbing content for people of a heavy influence. And I know how the system works. And on top of that, just from a quality perspective, I have like that like creative eye in terms of filmmaking. Like originally I wanted to get into like documentary making and stuff like that. So I have that eye, and I think my content also stands out because of that, simply because of the way it looks. And I think that's just another unfair advantage, which can be taught, but it takes years to learn. And I'm sort of that little bit ahead, which again is my unfair advantage.
Do you think like how much is patience still a vital skill for someone to learn when they get started out in the process of making content? Because like your job is to make this far quicker than 8 years for that same person. But at the same time, you can see people burn out. I'm sure you see coaches burn out all the time with their content because they're not getting X result when they don't see the years of hard work that goes into that, or at very least the external capital that's gone into paying for an editor, a videographer, which they might have themselves on an iPhone.
Yeah, I think it's just, it is a long game, but you can still get results short term. You might not get the results that you want, or that, like, you know, if you set a big goal, you're not going to get there in the next 12 months. That's just like a reality, but you will be taking those steps towards it. And when you reflect every 12 months, you'll be like, oh yeah, I've actually made some good progress this past year. Let's rinse and repeat that the following year. Let's rinse and repeat that the following year. So for example, this year, even though I've got that unfair advantage, I'm sort of dabbling in, well, not dabbling actually. I really want to go hard on YouTube. Like that's my goal for this year. I'm still doing all my Instagram content, but I've got a structure in that where for me, it's not that hard. Like I can post pretty much every day with not too much stress or overwhelm. But YouTube is a different beast because it does require quite a lot of time. It does require quite a lot of ideation. It does require a lot of editing. It requires a lot of creativity. So that's where I'm putting a lot more of my time. And I know that nothing's going to happen in the next 6 months. I'm going to review my year at the end of the year and be like, what worked this year? Not what worked this month, what worked this year, and go back through all of my content and seeing what to be the topics of like that seem to be performing the best. Okay, next year I'll start doubling down on that. But this year is experimentation and just upload every single day.
If someone's wanting then to look at like leveling up their content this year and they're choosing between YouTube and Instagram, what is the difference you found in the kind of content that works, and what should someone know as an expectation before making that decision?
I think YouTube is a long game. Like if you're getting into YouTube, it's be prepared to pay the 10-year game, not like the let's see where I'm at in 12 months. Like when you look at some of the people who are successes on YouTube now, like Modern Wisdom, for example, Chris Williamson with his podcast, you see like the small success he's probably had in the last 18 months where it seems his channel has blown up, but in reality he's been doing it for years and years and years and years. And then the same of like Ali Abdul, for example. Again, he's been doing it for the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So YouTube is a long game. So that's the expectation you've got to have with YouTube, is nothing's going to happen in 12 months. You might see progress, but the results that you want aren't going to happen in that time unless you're an outlier, unless something miraculous happens.
You hit a trend. Because I
Yeah,
have a mate of mine who's doing Hillocks videos, and he's gone from like 0 to 1,000 followers in no time because he happened to make content about something that's currently on a bit of a wave of momentum.
And you can sort of accelerate that process by doing that. Like you can lean into trending topics that are happening at a certain point in time. So, for example, as Hillocks is blowing up, the more you talk about Hillocks, the more your videos are going to start to blow up because more people are doing it. So, for example, you could do a video where it's like how to prepare for your first Hillocks. Over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, more and more people are going to want to watch that evergreen piece of content because Hillocks is just going to continue, by the looks of things, to grow and grow and grow. So you can sort of jump on that, but realistically, it's still going to be a slow process. Whereas Instagram, I still think it's slow, but it's faster. It's easier to manage. It's easier to do. You're uploading 60-second videos, not 15, 20-minute videos. You're basically condensing everything that you do on YouTube on a much smaller platform at a much bigger scale. And I just think it's a much easier platform to manage.
So when it comes to this, so a lot of people want to condense their workflow by like making YouTube videos and then cutting that down. So a YouTube can become, a blog post can become tweets, can become Instagram reels. Well, I get that from a sort of time management perspective, because Instagram's attention is hooks, the first 3 seconds of what you say, and the hook for YouTube maybe more the thumbnail. Is that I don't want to use the word optimal, but is that an efficient approach when you're actually trying to like make headways on Instagram, or is that going to make it difficult to capture someone's attention?
I think if you are making long form content, then you should still be cutting it down and posting it on Instagram because it's additional content. It's content that would, it's a waste to just put it on one platform when you can break it down and put it on short form platforms. However, I don't think it should be the foundation of your content. You should be creating content specific to the platform. So you'll quite often see that if you create a piece of content on Instagram, it probably won't perform as well on TikTok or YouTube Shorts because it's not designed specifically for that audience. The type of content you make is very, very different. TikTok seems to be very fast paced, very much raw, not that edited, whereas Instagram seems to be a little bit more polished, and then YouTube is obviously even more polished. So I think if you have that long form content, then yes, utilize it, incorporate it into your content strategy, but it shouldn't be the foundation. You should be creating content on Instagram that is directed specific for that platform and also directed specific to the audience on that platform.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know the one YouTube short that I had that got well over 1,000 views was one. It was very visual in nature, in the sense of I made the initial picture Chris Bumstead. So people are clicking on it because they see a picture of Chris Bumstead posing. But that same one didn't do very well on Instagram. And if I made a YouTube video and cut that down to Instagram and have to put weird hooks in the middle of a conversation, which would come across weird on YouTube, which might impact the reach that video has because it would seem disjointed.
Yeah.
So, like, going into the content side of things, then, like, what is the biggest mistakes? Coaches, as what's mostly the audience that are listening to this, what biggest mistakes do people make on Instagram when trying to grow their audience?
I would say the biggest mistake is people creating in a panic and a poorly time managed situation whereby the common theme of creating content seems to be consistency, and you need to post XYZ amount of days. Like you need to post every single day to see growth on Instagram. So therefore coaches think, I have to put something up today because it's the way to grow my Instagram. So they post something, but no thought's gone into that content. No strategy has gone into that content. They haven't written out the copy. They haven't thought who their ideal avatar is. They've just put content up for the sake of putting content up. And I think that's the issue with a lot of coaches. They don't allow themselves time to actually plan their content. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be like this afterthought where it's like, I should post, it's 9 p.m. at night, I should probably put something up today because I haven't put something up. It should be on Sunday, cool, I'm putting this on Monday, this on Tuesday, this on Wednesday, this on Thursday, this on Friday. Like, you know what you're doing. Same with your clients. You know what days your client's going to check in. You know what days you're going to sponsor them. You know what times you're going to go train. You know what your week looks like. Your content also needs to be factored into that system because it's part of your business. And in my opinion, I'm going to be biased on this in this sense, but I think it's the most important part of your business because it's what's marketing your business. And if there are no eyes on the content that you're putting out, you're not bringing in new eyes to your page. You're not bringing in new clients. Therefore, your business isn't growing. And in order for a business to grow, it needs to make money. If you're not making money, that business isn't going to last very long.
Because I suppose when we start looking at that and then breaking that down into how does somebody go about creating that structure with the content, I suppose that first thing is, where's that line between creativity and planning? Because there's sometimes where you have an amazing idea and recording it relatively quickly from that with that energy that you've got could potentially be the best thing. But if that's all you're doing, you're completely winging it. So what would you recommend, or in your case, what is your content schedule that allows you to come up with a number of ideas, high quality and consistency?
I think it's very unique to the person. There's no one way that like fits everyone. What I do isn't going to necessarily work for you, and what you do isn't necessarily going to work for someone else. Someone, like you just said, will thrive in a scenario where they just come up with an idea, script out, they film it, they edit it there and then, and that is the best piece of content that they can make. My only advice there would be make sure you're a week ahead of schedule. So that piece of content is good you've made it in the moment, but you're uploading it next week. That would be my idea with that, is try to get at least a week ahead of schedule. So that scenario works perfectly fine. I've got an idea, right, write it down, right, film it, edit it, boom, done. The only difference is you're just not posting it right there and then because you don't need to, because you've already made your content from last week going live this week. Whereas my strategy, because it works better for me, is I quite like to make about 10 pieces of content in one go. So my start to finish process is ideation, which is just over time. So when I'm walking normally I quite like to find ideas when I'm just walking on the treadmill in the mornings after I finish the gym. After I finish my gym session, I walk on the treadmill, for about 15 minutes. And if I find things that inspire me, maybe it's a newsletter that someone sent to me to like that morning, maybe it's a podcast I was listening to, maybe it's something on Instagram, something on YouTube, I'll just save that and just bank it for later and be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Like, remember to like look back at that. So I have like a little Notion thing and I just put it in there, and that's sort of like my brain dump area. Then I have another day where it's not the entire day. It might be an hour where I'll just come up with titles where I think will be of use for my audience. And it'll be very specific to that audience. And then I'll start to break it down a little bit. Okay, how can I make this into a hook? How can I now provide the value for it? How can I put a call to action here? How can I really script this piece of content out? And I'll do it for all of them. So then all 10 are good to go. So when it comes to filming, I'm not thinking, what do I need to film? I'm like, right, just tick them off one by one by one by one. I'll work my way through them. And then I'll just batch edit. So I won't edit all 10 and go because that will take me a very long time. But I will probably edit like 3 at a time. So I might do like 3, then I'll do 3 another day, 3 another day. And then I'm good to go for about 2 weeks. So it takes me a whole week to do that process, but now that's 2 whole weeks worth of content ready to go. For someone else, they might only want to be 1 week ahead of schedule and they create 5 pieces of content and they film in one go. For someone else, they might like to do the whole month. The only reason I wouldn't recommend doing the whole month is it tends to get a bit clunky. Things tend to get a little bit lost, whereby when you think about the content that you made on January 1st, when you go to post it on January, like the 30th of January, you begin to doubt yourself and you think, was that a good piece of content? Like, where was my mind at when I made that? And because it was so long ago, you have no idea what you were thinking. So I find 2 weeks is like that maximum sweet spot.
Yeah, I found that since having the podcast, so probably about 160, 170 episodes in. And as I do a couple of regular episodes a week with regular guests, and then I get guests like yourself in, as they come. And I'll do content with my mate Rob about things like, often clickbaity titles and Diary of a CEO become very common topics. But because I have the editor now that I have, that piece of content could be out in 8-9 weeks once it goes through into the batch creator. And that point there is like, well, that episode's long gone by that point, which for a podcast is maybe all right. But for an Instagram reel, it's like, I want to something at the moment. If something's inspiring, if something's trending, if something's catching on, if a big podcast has dropped, that's like, would you recommend that when people almost interrupt their schedule because like, right, I'm going to jump on something that I think could get eyeballs?
Yeah, I think if something's happening in the world that is relative to your brand, your business, then yeah, interrupt that pattern, because it might be, you can jump on it. That's called like jumping on a trend, right? And that's when you can get a broader audience on your content. So let's say, for example, Diary of CEO, Stephen Bartlett, he brings on a controversial guest and there's something that he talks about in that episode where you're like, I have a strong opinion what he's spoken about in that episode. And maybe you do a reaction video where you're like, I don't necessarily agree with what this person says. And you upload it the day after that episode went live. Then yeah, interrupt that pattern, because it's probably going to be of benefit because it's a trending piece of content. But that's not always going to happen. Or maybe you can incorporate it into your schedule. Maybe there are things that are always trending that you can incorporate into your schedule, but it's not likely that there's always going to be something of trending that week where you're like, I have to upload something about this now. So if you have a foundation to work off of and you're always ahead of schedule, then you can always chuck that bonus piece of content in. And it's exactly that. It's a bonus piece of content. It just adds a little additional layer to the content you've already made.
Yeah. So you've mentioned attention a number of times, and the word hook, which is a buzzword that's bouncing around Instagram all over the place. What is the importance of a hook, and what is some of the key things to consider when making a good hook or keeping someone's attention?
A hook, I mean, I don't know what the official definition of a hook is. I'm not even sure if there is one, but my definition of a hook is just the ability to grab someone's attention within the first 3 to 10 seconds. It's giving that viewer a reason to watch the rest of the video. That's how I visualize it. So if someone clicks on your video, they're scrolling, I don't know, half an hour before they go to bed, they're just scrolling through, they click on a video, the statement that you say in that opening 3 to 10 seconds should be the reason as to why that person stays on for the video, to get all the value you're about to give them. So it needs to be strong. It needs to be attention grabbing. I think the problem with a lot of people think hooks, they think of the likes of Mr. Beast on YouTube, where it's screaming, it's shouting, there's things popping up screen, it's bright, it's colorful, everything's oversaturated, it's very like blah and in your face. It doesn't. You can articulate a hook in a very professional manner. It's just the language that you use, and if you want technical, like the copywriting that you use. And that's why I think a lot of people don't plan enough of their content, because all of that comes from the ideation phase. All of that comes in the scripting phase. Once you've spent, I would recommend that you probably spend 80% of your time, if you're planning one piece of content, on the hook, on your opening line, because you know what the value is. Once you've got that person in and they want to know why they should watch the rest of the video, then it's just over delivering with your content and giving them everything what you promised at the start.
So what in your eyes would make a good hook? Because obviously this is something we went over a couple of days ago. If someone's hooks with the issue, what are some of the key things that people could start doing right now?
I actually did an Instagram post on this today, so I don't know when this episode will be going live, but if you go back on my Instagram, you'll be able to see it. But I essentially broke down how to write a decent hook. And it's all about asking questions of who your ideal avatar or audience is. So it's basically problem solving. What problems does that viewer or avatar have currently? And these will all come under your like content pillars, normally the topics you would regularly talk about. But what problems do they normally have? What pain does that normally cause that person? And how can you solve that pain? Those are typically my 3 steps of building a well-rounded hook. Sometimes you can skip the first 2 and go straight to problem solving. So it can be, here's 3 tips to fix your back squat. It's just straight in with like problem solving. Whereas if you bulk that hook out, it could be, do you struggle with lower back pain when you're back squatting? Here's my 3 tips to fix that. So that's like a more bulked out hook. So you can go straight to like solution, or you can give it like a bit of story, a bit of depth to it.
Cool. And we saying that this generally it's the first 3 seconds that you've got to fit this in. Is that sort of the general mission statement to try and get people's attention?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a rule of thumb, but from what I see, if you think how long 3 seconds is, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, like when you actually count it out, and when you think when you're scrolling, how much do you actually give a piece of content before you scroll away from it? And in my eyes, it's probably even less than 3 seconds. You're probably like, no. So I think ideally that 3 to 5 seconds is just get straight to the point. Don't waffle on. I think just be very efficient value that person's time. Think they are extremely busy. They've got other things to be doing. Okay, cool. I've just got this really good bit of information for you that you can take away and apply. That's essentially what you're trying to do.
So when it comes to like, how important is the editing process in this? Because the thing I always find with content is that the raw footage does really well, and then someone ups the game. Podcasts are fine on Zoom, and then Diary of a CEO happens and there's a studio. Vlogs are raw and authentic, and then you've got Casey Neistat setting up a camera in a bush so he can skateboard past it. With Instagram now, I think we're starting to see this where everybody has this well-edited pop-ups, sound effects, reels, paper effects. The quality and lighting and everything has just gone so high. The barrier to entry is harder than ever. Do you think the quality of the content, the hook, the message will still stand out for a new coach that maybe doesn't have the knowledge or the know-how to do this? Or do you think that nowadays getting an editor early in your first outsource is more important than ever? Unless you want to learn to do it yourself, of course.
Yeah, I think no. In short answer, the problem is editing tends to go in trends, and I think if you continue to follow that trend, then you've just become another one of those people, and you get lost amongst that noise. So I actually think now more than ever, the more raw the content, the more it's going to stand out. The less polished it is, the more it's going to stand out. I think you've got all of these fancy edits. So if you think maybe a year ago, everyone had the Hormozy captions, right? Everyone had like the greens, the blues, the yellows, the emojis coming up on screen. That was like that vibe. Everyone wanted that kind of video, right? Whereas now you see everyone's got like the paper thing. I think it's Ali Abdul that started it, where everyone's got the paper transitions. They've got the things going on behind them. Everyone wants that at the moment. Whereas I personally am more like, can I go against that? Can I simplify that process? Because I think that will make my content stand out more because it doesn't look like everyone else's. It's not going along the same trend. Those edits look really cool. They're visually appealing, but I find myself with those sort of edits completely forgetting what the message is because I'm just absorbing the fireworks that are going off in front of me, and I'm not actually paying attention to the value within the video. Whereas I find I pay more attention to the content where someone's just talking directly to me in the camera, in the phone. I find I get a lot more value from that. Like when you do podcast episodes, I find the ones where it's literally the guest spreading their message and there's nothing happening. They're just talking to the microphone. That's the one I'm like, oh yeah, I really resonate with that. When there's loads of things flashing on screen, I'm like, this is too much. So with my editing process, try to keep it as simple as possible. It's not too flat. I'll add a few bits and bobs in there, but that's merely for more my own creative flair and to keep my creative juices going. But I'm not doing it because I think it's of value to the content. I'm not doing it because I want to stand out. I'm not doing it because I think it will make my content any better. I'm just doing those things here and there because I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be fun if I chuck that in there. Let's just do that. But I try to keep it as simple as possible. I think editing is more a time-saving thing than it is making your content actually better. I think it's more just allowing you to bring back some of your time. So if you can outsource it, then that gives you more time now to spend on the ideation phase. That gives you more time now to actually script out the content. Like, to me, that's of more value than the editing. So that would be my only reason to outsource editing, is purely from time, not to make the content any better. I think just from time.
And I suppose even if it's not making the content tenfold better, it means you have a base layer of quality that your business can be known for, and then you can spend more time creating better videos and better content, knowing that it's not going to be let down by your lack of editing skills, even if it's not going to be making them 10 times better at the same time.
Yeah. And I think the problem is as well with like doing these fancy edits and doing them like everyone else, is your brand gets lost in that. Like, your branding's gone because you're just doing what everyone else is doing. You might have your own fonts or your own colors, but the style in which that video has been edited is someone else's brand, and you've just taken, like, that was Ali Abdul's style and everyone else has taken it, so that's his brand. You'll notice Alex Hormozy doesn't do the green, the blues, the text anymore, because it got overused. Everyone else was doing it. So he's like, right, I need to switch this up. I need to bring my branding back into this. So now he does his own style. I can guarantee in probably 6 months' time, he's going to have a different style because everyone else will start taking that one again. So I think that's also the thing with these fancy edits, is your branding gets lost. Simplify it as much as you can. Have consistent colors, consistent fonts, a consistent look to your page, and just simplify the process, simplify the edit.
I suppose as well, like, it never looks as good the second time. Like an imitation Ali Abdal, people see through it. It's like, you mentioned Hormozy, and that's a great impact, right? If I won't do this because I think I would look very stupid, but I have seen other people do this, wear a white vest, a cap, and nose tape, because Hormozy does it. Like, you just become an imitation Hormozy. Like, I remember the old school Hormozy videos where he's in this long, very thin room with his nose tape and there's no editing, and some of that was the best value content. Like, do you think there's sometimes a place, for example, like when some people say if your stories haven't got much reach, go off for a day and then come back on the next day, it spikes up. Do you think there's sometimes a time and a place where, let's say, your content's basic, but there's a quality, there's the camera, there's the lighting, there's the edits. If you do literally you talking to a camera, or you react to something on a green screen, something really raw, really unedited, really basic, do you find that stuff works better than so much thumbnail designs and Canva where you say, is this a graphic designer or is this a coach?
I think it's knowing your brand and what you want from it. I think if the fancy edits and that's the end goal is what you want, if you look at someone else's work and you're like, I love that, I wish my work would look like that, then go for it. But if you don't, you're like, oh, I don't actually resonate with that kind of content anyway, then I don't think you should try to make your content look like that purely because it's what's trending and it's what seems to be doing well. I think just stick to your roots, because that's what's going to shine through. When you look back through someone's page and it looks the same for however many months, and they're hammering home the same message, they're hammering it with the same look. There's a few people that I know where they film in the exact same setup, exact same lighting, and all they've got is captions. They might have one or two things pop up on screen, but I am dialed in because I'm more listening than anything. I'm just like, I'm not really watching what's going on. I'm listening to what they're trying to tell me. And I think quite often the message gets lost with all the fancy stuff going on, and it's just who can make the fanciest edit, when really it's like, no, who's telling them the best message and who's telling that message over and over and over again. I had a client yesterday who I always advise people to be vulnerable in their content. I think a lot of people try to doing the hook and stuff like that is really good, because that's gonna you give people valuable information. But sometimes you need to be vulnerable because you need to build an emotional connection with your audience. And this client was kind of scared of posting this piece of content because it was really vulnerable, but it wasn't a fancy edit. It was just old footage, it was old videos, it was her doing a voiceover over the top, and it's like one of her best performing pieces of content in months from an engagement perspective. It's got like normally she would get like 5 comments and maybe 20 likes or something along those lines, and it's got like 100 comments, like 300 likes, because it's really raw and really vulnerable and really honest, and there's nothing fancy going on, and that's why it stood out.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points there. You mentioned the raw and basic thing. I think someone like Ben Carpenter is a great example of that, right? It is him with very basic captions, and he never has anything else that pops up. But the message is there. You know why you're going to Ben Carpenter's page, and it's very clear. And I think like going to your client there with the super raw footage, do you think like a piece of content like that way would work better if you're saying like you said earlier on, scrolling down, is it the same color scheme, is it the same message, has it got the same look? Do you think a piece of content like that works better if you deliberately go away from your usual look? Because I've got a really raw, unedited video and I put my usual Canva graphic over the top. It loses the raw, I've got to get this out this now, where if everything like in my example was orange and blacks and all of a sudden it's just my face, no editing, no nothing, telling a message, it stands out from everything else.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think with that sort of stuff, it's got to be drip fed into your strategy. It's not just something you would like randomly post. So it's maybe once a week. I'm going to do a vulnerable post once a week. I don't know what that is yet, but I'm going to do it once a week. Whereas a lot of people, if they have like the very structured Canva cover photo, that's going to look odd. But if you have the structured Canva cover photo and you have one of those, then it's a random reel, then it's a random reel, then it's the vulnerable post, then the Canva photo, and you've got that consistent look going all the time, then it looks perfectly fine. It looks perfectly normal. I think if you've just got one piece of content that just is vulnerable for the sake of it being vulnerable, that doesn't really make sense. I think it needs to be included in the bigger picture.
So before doubling back and going on to content, to take a little bit of a sidestep and to give you maybe when my editor clips this up, maybe your vulnerable post of the week.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned a year ago about going through severe burnout. And I wanted to talk about this because I think I was going through this very same thing at the exact same time as you were. And I think people misunderstand burnout. I've had coaches say burnout doesn't exist, but it is debilitating. It certainly was in my perspective. So for people that may be into the content stuff, they're hammering hard, they maybe not get results, maybe they're not satisfied with the business, whatever it is, tell us a little bit about your journey through that. What was it like having burnout, and what's the path been out of it?
I'll give a little bit of backstory as to why it occurred first. So obviously I was videographer, everything was snowballing, and I'd been doing it for maybe 5 years. But obviously those first 5 years are the first 5 years of my business. It's very baby stages. And when it's in that scenario, you just want it to grow. So you do everything you can to make it grow. So I didn't go on holidays. I would work every possible moment. I remember my girlfriend at the time, she worked 5 days a week, but because she was on like a weird rota, sometimes it would be on the weekend, sometimes it wouldn't. So I would pretty much just work every day because I would be like, well, I have to work Monday to Friday. And then she'd be like, I'm working on Saturday. I'd be like, cool, I'll work on Saturday as well. And then I'll maybe do a bit more work on Sunday. So it ends up I'm working every day. And I had been for years pretty much. Hadn't taken any time off, didn't go on holiday. Lockdown was essentially an excuse to do more work because I was just at home doing more work. Hang on, I've gone all out of focus. There we go. That would infuriate me if I was out of focus for the video. So yeah, and I was just working. And then towards the end of burnout, when it occurred, I was having doubts in my mind as to whether what I was doing in that moment was what I wanted to be doing going forward anyway. So I already had some lot of reservations of what I was currently doing with regards to videography and figuring out what the next steps were. And we had this period where some people, if they know my background and who I used to work with, basically we were in America for an entire month. And I filmed for that entire month. So from waking to sleeping, I was working for that whole month whilst abroad. Not really having any of my own time or my own space. And what I had done prior to this like trip away where I was working was I had booked myself a week when I got back from America to just I was like, I'm not going to do any work when I get back from that week. I'm just going to chill. And when we got back, I chilled for a week, and that week ended up being 2, and that second week becoming 3rd, and then 4 weeks, and then 5 weeks, and I couldn't go back to work, and it was then where burnout. I mean, hindsight now, I can realize it is burnout, because in the moment you don't realize it is burnout. You just don't know what's going on. You're like, what's the matter with me? Why don't I want to get up? Why don't I want to go to work? Why don't I want to go to gym? Why don't I want to go see my friends? Why don't I want to do anything? You just get caught in this vicious cycle. And you can't figure out why it's happening. Again, like I say, now upon reflection, you know why it was happening. You know what was happening. But in that moment, you're like, what's happening to me? What's wrong? And so I actually thought I need a complete change. That's what I need. So in my mind, I was like, I need to change everything. So I actually leaned on going back to PT in the moment. I was like, I'll go back at my local gym. I'll start doing some online coaching. I'll start this. I was just trying to find something to give me motivation to do something, because I just didn't want to do anything. And I was trying to spark something. But in reality, I just needed time. I just needed time back to myself to just unwind. And honestly, I wouldn't say I started to feel myself until the back end of last year. So sort of maybe October time. So it probably took an entire year for me to actually be like, okay, like I'm starting to feel myself again now. Like I'm not I don't feel exhausted all the time. I'm wanting to go out for dinner with my girlfriend. I'm wanting to go train. I'm wanting to pick up the camera again. I'm wanting to talk to this audience. I'm wanting to do X, Y, Z. I wanted to do all the things that I used to love, but I just sort of pushed them aside and didn't want to do them anymore. Yeah. And that was my process. And it was horrible, because you just don't know what's going on. You think something's wrong. You think it's hard to describe how you feel, but it is not a nice feeling at all, because you just feel lost. You don't know who you are, what you like, what you do and don't like. It's just a horrible feeling.
Yeah. Lost is a really good word. We're going through that story. There were so many parallels, so many, things that resonated with my last year. And it's almost identical in terms of, it took me about October, November this year to, even though things were going good and there was clear improvement signs, I started noticing I was getting better around July time, probably when I moved home from the UK. And that was the big change. But there was lingering things that was just I wouldn't shake, like the last little bits of it. And for me, it was a very similar thing. It's like, I'd done this for PT for 13 years. I was still working heavily on the gym floor, and I was in a very anxiety-driven Hong Kong where everyone pressed lift buttons with tissue paper. And I'd come out of a previous company, not the one I was working for at the time then, that I didn't enjoy. Let's put it that way, for not getting myself in any trouble. And like, it was that exact same thing of just like, I feel trapped. And like yourself, you almost get into that fight or flight desperation mode of, what do I need to do? What do I think I need to do now? And it never worked, because I was just trying to find the quick fix. It's like the content. It's like, what is the bit of content that's going to make me go viral, rather than creating the content strategy that's going to grow followers over a year and a half? And I went to TMP and I did therapy. And therapy is a really interesting thing. I don't know if you've ever done a bout of therapy, but it's like, if I took ayahuasca in the jungle, it's like 10 years of therapy on overdrive in 4 hours, right? And I haven't done that. But therapy is one of those things, like moving to a new country, it's gradual. You don't know it's working until you look back 6 months later and go, I'm a different person. It's just gradually one step at a time. And it's like I said to you before we came on the air about a piece of content, I'm thinking about an analogy I was told by Pat Davidson about this dark side of the mountain. And for a while, you just feel like you're trapped in it. And looking back now, it's amazing to think how far I've come, the business I'm most excited about in my life. But it was these small baby steps, just consistently done, that even I didn't even know I was doing. I was just taking this one step forward, even though I felt like crap, but just something I could do that got me through that hole. So like, what stopped you going back to PT? What was the thing that went, no, this is, because when you're burnt out from it, you could have easily packed this in. What made you have faith there was light at the end of the tunnel?
I'm not sure. I did have one thing. I think it was almost like a subconscious thing where something was, it was almost like, no, this isn't the right thing to do. And I would back out of it. So it wasn't like a necessarily a reason where I was like, no, actually, I'm going to go do this. It was more something was telling me, no, that's not right. Like you've done what you've done for so long. It was almost like in my head, I was like, it would be a shame now to just be like, do you know what? I'm just going to go get a job and go back to that. Like, I'm just going to go back to that life. I almost saw it as like an easy option out. And thankfully, the gym didn't have any jobs. They were like, oh no, we don't actually have any jobs going at the moment. I think if they did have a job, I might have taken it. But almost like, you know, they're like certain things happen at a certain time for a certain reason. I think that was one of those moments where it happened for a certain reason. It almost saved me, whereby I think if they said, yeah, we've got this job available, we've got this many hours available, I would have been like, cool, I'll come sign up now. I'll come do the job. But they didn't. And so I didn't do that. And I almost felt something was wrong with me. And I brought so many self-help books. And at the end of each self-help book, I was like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. That's what's wrong with me. And then I would read another one and be like, oh no, that's what's wrong with me. And then I'd read another one and be like, oh, that's what's wrong with me. And I was just constantly trying to find what was wrong and how do I fix it. But like I say, in reality, it was just going through the process, one step forward every single day. You don't even know what that step is, but just keep going. Just keep trying to figure whatever it is out. I think the one thing that saved me, which again I didn't do for any particular reason at all, was I just set up a new Instagram page, and that was my point of like, I'm going to bring back my creativity. I think it was sort of mid last year, so I think it was like July when I started the page that majority of people will probably know now, where I was like, I'm just like, my creative juices are maybe going a little bit more. There's a few things sparking now. I'm just going to set up a new Instagram page, not tell anyone. I'm just going to do it for me. And that's what I started doing. I just started uploading. If you go back, you can probably, I don't think I've got enough videos for you not to be able to scroll back. Or you can probably scroll back and see some of the things. And it's just random photos, a few videos here and there. And I'm just trying different things. Those creative juices are sort of coming back again. And that, I think that was when I started to feel myself. But again, it still took another like 5 months for me to be like, I'm very clear on what I'm doing now. Like, I know exactly where I'm going, to the point now where I'm in the position where some nights I can't actually sleep because I've got so many ideas going through my head, and I'm so excited now. I'm like, I need to write this down. Like, this is a great idea. I've got this idea. I've got that idea. I've got this idea. Like, I'm completely different. And it's amazing what can happen in just a few months when it's so clear on what you want to achieve now and what you want to do. I'm like, I've got so many ideas flowing. It's ridiculous.
It's mad, the amount of parallels between our two journeys here. And I do think there's an element of, when it comes to workplace burnout, that stagnation is that killer. Because I know for me, like, of course, I've always been a nerd. I'm always learning about the sciencey stuff. And would I need to know, for sake of about thyroid and hormonal health to work with my Gen Pop clients? I do need to know it, because I need to know the signs and symptoms if this is a problem. However, the people I'm seeing are probably only 1% to 2%. Every now and again, I might see someone where that's relevant to apply and use. So you're learning stuff not using stuff. You're just going through the motions, and then it just becomes this, I'm stuck. I'm not going anywhere. Whereas now I write 5 lectures a week for content. That is that higher level stuff. So that creativity has got going, and maybe in the sense of having your own page, it's like, well, I can try a style that maybe I wouldn't be confident right now trying with a client who's paying me a lot of money for the quality I know I can do with the old way that I was doing. Now it's like, right, I can test this and I can explore this. And do you think that creativity was a lot of the reason why you managed to get where you are now and get out of this?
I think so. I think the biggest issue I had when I was in it is, like I say, I had that, there was that little bit of me was like, what I'm doing right now isn't the right direction. So then when I fell into that sort of process of being burnt out, in my head, I was like, most people was like, oh, I just need to go back to feeling how I was. But I was like, I don't want to go back to where I was. So I think that's why it almost intensified it even more, was like, it's not a simple solution of like, oh, I'll just go back to doing videography and we'll be fine sort of scenario. I just need to get back there. It was like, I don't want to go back there. So I was like, I don't know. I literally have no idea where I'm going. And I think I knew I wanted to do something creative. I just didn't know what that looked like. And I think that's where the Instagram came in. And also, I think one of the weirdest things that actually helped me a lot, I think I've spoken about this before in a YouTube video, was actually running. About the same time of when I started to feel burnout, I'd never run before in my life. I was like your classic, almost like bodybuilder, like anti-cardio. And I just started running one day and I was like, I'm going to run. And then another week I was like, I'm going to run. And the 5Ks turned into like 10Ks, 10Ks turned into 15s, 15s turned into like half marathons. And I just kept running and running and running. And it was like, that was almost my therapy. It was like my headspace, because I could just think. I wasn't like on my phone scrolling and just like seeping like further down into like my own self-loathing. I wasn't just aimlessly watching like videos on YouTube or watching movies. I was out in nature, no headphones. Like I wouldn't run with headphones, and I would just run and I would just think. And I think that's what that also helped a lot. I didn't know at the time, but it helped a lot.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that feeling of like, I don't know where I'm going. I just know what I don't want to be. And do you think, because you turned 30 last year, is that right? Like the end of December last year. So
you can remind me.
29 during this period. Oh, I'm 33. If it makes you feel any better, I'm much more the elder statesman.
No, I think because
can't run as far as you.
Because of the state I was in.
I'm fit.
In my head, I thought 30 was like a positive change because of the like position I was in, like mentally. I was like, 30 is going to be so good, because I was like, it's like in my head, I was like, it's a change. So I was like, goodbye 20s. That was a horrible way to end my 20s. So I was like, let's go into the 30s.
That's interesting, because the question I was going to ask for that there was like Chris Williamson always talks about this. It's called the manopause, right? Where you see people that are bodybuilders in their 20s, and when they hit 30, all of a sudden they all start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I fought for all my life. I'm still fighting, but I get closer and closer to a chokehold. I can see it coming. But I don't know how much of that is an influence, certainly with me, of like, with all my life of just doing PT, I wanted to be essentially a small bodybuilder, and I did that, and I got lean, and then I got married, and like my business changed, and I didn't really want to work with clients much anymore. I'm like, well, I've lost the love of training a bit, because I'd like to be shredded, but I don't care like I did when I was 22. Like, was there an element of that getting towards the end of your 20s of you had expectation of maybe where you were going to be, your life changes, you're in a new phase of life, your priorities are shifted, and this identity that you had up to 29 wasn't the same identity you kind of had at that time?
Yeah, I think it wasn't at the forefront of my mind, but it probably was at the back of my mind, maybe looming over me. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm 29, I need to have everything figured out now by the time that I turn 30. But in my head, there was elements where I was thinking, I'm not where I thought I would be, and maybe I should be there. And from a less, just even little things like with my partner, I was like, I want to like go out for dinners and meals and stuff like that and be a good partner. But I don't, at the same time, I don't want to go do that. And those things would grind on me a lot, where it wasn't necessarily, I was just like frustrated at myself because I was like, I want to go do that. But at the same time, I don't want to go do that. I was in like these two different worlds.
Yeah. So before we door back on a couple of closing questions and maybe door back onto a little bit of content, if someone is going through this now, listening to us, because like we're in this world now where Instagram is so showing the highlight reel, and it can be so alienating from someone looking at everyone else's life and thinking it's perfect. And if someone is struggling right now and then happens to stumble on this episode, what would you say to them?
If they were going through that process of burnout, I would be try to find something that you can focus on. And it could be the most random thing in the world. So for me, it happened to be running. And like I say, in the moment, I didn't realize it was helping me, but it was something for me to work towards all the time, which was in the sense of, can I run a little bit further this week? Can I run a little bit faster this week? Can I improve my running technique this week? Like there was just something to focus on each week, which it wasn't the biggest of things, but it gave me something to work towards. It was nothing productive in the sense of getting me out of the sort of career-based struggles that I was having. But I think from just having something to work towards was helping. For someone else, it might be cooking. It might be, I'm going to make a meal this Saturday for my partner, and I'm going to research a nice meal that I can make. And then you look forward to that at the end of the week. It might be going for a hike. It might be whatever it might be. I think you just need one thing to focus on and try to think outside of the box of what that thing is. It doesn't have to have a purpose behind it. It just gives you something to focus on.
Yeah, for me, I actually doubled down on my career and just like, right, if I as I started to piece together what I wanted to do, which is more in the education space, like I need to get better. So I was like, anytime I wasn't in, I was studying. I was like, right, at some point this is going to pay off. But I know previous times I've not had burnout quite like, last year when I had mini bouts of this. I have there's a shelf at the bottom here, which you might be able to see just underneath the picture of me and my wife. There is loads of boxes of playing cards because I did card magic as a hobby for a long time. And that was the moment when I realized I was burnt out, because I was always taught, Luke Lehman, a great mentor of mine, said that everyone should have a personal trainer should have a hobby that's not training, watching training, thinking about training, playing a sport or training. And I used to get magic. And then all of a sudden I didn't want to do that. It was the top of the stress cup. It was the thing that little last bit of water that made it overflow. But at another period in my life where there wasn't the full, that's the thing that stopped. That might be the thing that stops me having burnout again.
Yeah.
Even if it didn't help at the time because there was two in it.
Yeah, I think my thing was training, because obviously I wasn't a PT at the time. I wasn't an online coach. So my hobby is training. I love to go train every day. I train every single day because it's my thing. It's not, some people were like, can't believe you're like going to run like a couple of nights ago. It's freezing cold. It was like -1. And I was like, wow, finished work, I'm going to go for a run. And I was like genuinely excited to do it because that's my thing. I love to go train, whatever it is, whether it's in the gym or whether it's running. And as soon as I started just like resent that process, and like I was like, nah, I'm not going to go today. Just when that sort of started to trickle in, I was like, something's up, something's wrong.
Yeah. So to double back on the content thing, I've got a couple of closing questions for you, but there's one question I want to ask you before, because I think this question will make the next one more actionable.
Okay.
And when we did my content all on Wednesday, we looked at the amount of views I had. And now when people start looking at insights, particularly on Instagram and YouTube, it's a minefield. There's so many data points. We can't look at them all, especially when it's not our job to do this. It's part of many other things. So what are the key metrics that someone should be looking at to know if their content's going in the right way?
I think the key ones are a deeper level of engagement. So are people commenting? Are people actually spending a tiny bit of their time to actually ask a question or say that they enjoyed that piece of content? someone can easily go tap tap with their finger on the screen, and that's not really engagement. It's just more an appreciation. It's like, oh, that was a good piece of content. Like, it got my attention. Whereas when someone comments, or if someone shares, or someone saves it, when you see like the little save button, in my mind, that's like someone's going to come back to that at a later date because they found that of use. And I think particularly when it comes to coaches, that save tool is even more valuable, especially when you're putting out how-tos or example workouts, because that means someone's going to come back and maybe whilst in the gym, they're like, oh, what did that person say on how to do an RDL? What am I doing wrong? Oh, let me just re-watch that video that they did. I think that is a really good thing to focus on. And then beyond that, it's even further in terms of conversations, which is DMs. Like, someone's actually going that little bit further to actually send you essentially a private message to ask for your help, then that's like another insight. Now, that's not like data you get back from Instagram to be like, you had 10 DMs today. But I think that's the process I would go through, is sort of comments where someone takes the time out of their day to actually ask you a question or show their appreciation for that content. A save, whereby in your mind, someone's going to refer back to that at a later date. And then obviously DMs. I really don't care for likes. I don't get any, when I see a piece of content and it's got 10,000 likes, I'm like, versus something that's got 10 likes, I'm like, it doesn't make a difference to the content to me. Like, it's irrelevant. I think the amount of comments and the amount of shares and the amount of saves and the amount of DMs you get in are the most important metrics to focus on.
I always get very proud of a piece of content, certainly from my current audience. If I ask someone to, like, I know it's overplayed now, but if you ask someone to DM the word and someone DMs you a word, they've watched the content, they've then read the caption, and then they have gone to a DM to message you, which is 3 in sequence bits of I trust this person to get you there. You know that's a warm lead.
Yeah.
So if likes something much else-wise, because obviously when we spoke, like, not my engagement could be better. I could get more comments, I get more saves, I could get more DMs. But when we spoke, a lot of it was like, well, that bit from your current audience is doing okay, but there's no one new looking at it. Are we looking at views then, as opposed to likes and things like this, if the problem is you want new eyes?
Yeah, I think views are one of those superficial data points whereby if you're not getting any leads into your business, if you are getting no comments whatsoever, then maybe you need a new audience and you need new eyeballs on your page. I think the problem with a lot of people's content and their Instagram pages is, for a lot of people, it's gone through changes. Like, your business like grows and changes over the years, and your Instagram page has probably gone through that same process, which means the piece of content that you put up 5 years ago to talk to that audience member 5 years ago might not be the same piece of content that you're putting out now. You might be trying to talk to a completely different avatar, but you've still got those people following you, which tells Instagram that your current audience isn't interacting with your posts, which means we're not going to push it because they don't think it's very good. So we're definitely not going to put it anywheres. So I think in that moment, it's trying to continue to put out the valuable content, the stuff that builds a deeper connection. That should still be your foundation, and like rinse and repeat the message that you're trying to get across. But you need to do broader content to get more eyes on that content of value. And we need to the only way we can measure that metric is through views. How many more eyes have I got on my content? And views is that metric.
Yeah, I love that. So my closing questions I have. So recently you did a reel saying how you got 100,000 views on a reel with less than 5k followers. Now, I could ask you how you did that, but I say, like, if you set yourself a target to get 200,000 views, or you might have hit that now, or whatever the next goal is from that, what would you do now? If someone wants to achieve 100,000 views, or if you want to get your next target, what would you do to ensure that?
I would say you can't and you won't. I would say that piece of content that I put out was the how it got 100,000 views is the same process that I apply to all my other content that gets 5,000 views, 10,000 views. It just so happened that it seemed to resonate with a few more people, and Instagram pushed it. It is when you get like a viral, and viral I think is relative to your audience. If you've got 10 followers and you get 10,000 views, for you that's probably viral. So viral is always relative to the amount of following that you have, but it's 99% luck. And it's just, the reason I say to people upload consistency is because the more you throw at it, the more chances you have of something sticking. So it is just, when something goes that viral, it is luck. I think the only thing that you could potentially, and I hate that it's the fact, but it probably is something you have to factor in, is I used a trending audio, which in that moment, I think when I used it had like 2,000 uses, something like that. It was quite low. And now it's like at 80,000 uses. So I got on a trend in terms of audio very early. Now, again, I don't think trending audio should be the foundation of your content. That's not the goal. But if we're in a phase of where we want to get new eyeballs on our content, then let's try and leverage things like that. At the end of the day, Instagram tell you this is a trending audio. They tell you it for a reason. They're like, use this because it's trending and we're telling you it's trending. So if you find like a kind of music which works with your brand, with your message and just the overall vibe of your coaching business, then yeah, use a trending audio. It might work, might not. You gotta create the content, do the things that Instagram like, give it to them, and just hope and be like, please, please do something with it. But do that every day as much as you can, and just do it consistently. Keep ringing that bell for the next 12 months.
The luck is definitely something that sort of resonated with me. I remember the only piece of content I'd say generally went, again, relative viral for me, where it probably got like 10,000 views, which to me seems mental. It was a clip from the podcast. So me and my guest host were doing a completely random off-topic episode where he talked about manifesting a ghost who was wearing flip-flops. Right? Nothing to do with either our audiences. I didn't have a trending audio, which is something I found on CapCut. I put a few like cheesy little ghost captions that like appeared like a ghost, but it wasn't like it was a lad who opened up a CapCut on his phone for the first time and was trying to play around with it. Somehow I must have dropped that on a day where ghosts and aliens were a key talking point in the world, and I've never been able to recreate it since. But cool.
Yeah, it's weird. Like normally, the content that goes viral for like people like coaches or people just upload educational content, the ones that go viral are the ones that you least suspect. You're like, why is that going viral? Why is that getting so many views? I remember when it started to pick up traction, because it wasn't straight away. It was like 2 weeks after I posted it that it started to build traction. Like it was on its normal, like 5,000 views, something along those lines. And then all of a sudden I woke up and it had like 10,000 views. And then the next morning I woke up, it had 20,000 views. And then like 30,000. It was just gaining like tens of thousands of views per day. And it was just a random piece of content that I threw up. I didn't think, do you know what? This is the one, like this is going to go viral. It was just a piece of content I put up. And when I say that statement, like to my partner, to my girlfriend, when I'm like, I think this is going to perform really well, never performs well. Never performs well. But like I say, you can lean onto those trends, and there's bits and bobs you can do, but more often than not, it's just luck what goes well and what doesn't. You can try and figure things out, and you might see some results. You can purposefully try and create a viral piece of content, but it's going to be really hard work. And when in reality, in trying to make that one piece of content, you could create 10 valuable piece of content which talks directly to your avatar and then drives clients into your business, because that's the most important part.
And that key's the thing we didn't speak on this episode. We spoke about before coming on air, like whether you want to be an influencer or a business owner, because this is why I think it's really important, as you said earlier on, about strategy being the most important thing. I've had conversations with coaches about what should I do for my before and after photos because they don't get many likes and shares on Instagram. And I'm like, well, yeah, but maybe your reel will, and maybe that'll get more eyes on your products, and maybe your info stuff will get more shares. But if you're a personal trainer who's wanting online clients and they come onto your page and they don't see any results, that automatically means I'm not going to trust that person with that. Whereas you might say, right, look, no one's going to like this post, but I put this there when someone follows me, they go, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like a great example of this is obviously you work with Ben West, right? Look, I bet if I went on his stuff now, the least performing posts are his transformations. Yeah. But it shows that he's not just a random influencer with a six-pack and videos of him training. He's also getting results. So I look at his page and I don't think of him as a fitness influencer. I think of him as a coach that I would potentially hire if I was looking for that kind of service. And that's the difference maker. It's the combination of the two.
Yeah, I think you just need to have an emotional detachment from the content you're posting and an awareness of that type of content. Someone had this, a client asked me earlier, like, how should they present an offer they're going to put out that they're going to be taking on X amount of clients over the next month? Should I do it as a carousel, as a reel? They're going to put the classic few transformational pictures in there and whatnot. And I said, realistically, it doesn't really matter because this isn't going to be a high-performing piece of content. It's not going to go viral. It's not going to be getting thousands of views. In fact, it's probably going to underperform in comparison to your normal content, primarily because you're selling to someone and people don't like to be sold to. But it's part of running a business. And someone that comes across your page a few months down the line is going to see that and be like, wow, they do get results. Like, they actually walk the walk, they talk the talk. They do have social proof that they can do the thing that they're telling me they can do. So yeah, I think it's just having awareness of content when you're posting on it, that sometimes you'll be like, I hope this performs well. Like, I put a lot of effort into this. But with things like that, where it's almost selling, always be aware it's probably not going to perform very well, and don't expect it to perform well. But also know it's talking to the person who you've been talking to for months and months and months and months, giving them the content of value. And that's the most important thing, that one piece of content will sell to that person.
I think that's the beauty of Instagram as well, right? Whereas YouTube and even podcasts, an old one might be recommended to you. You can post a rubbish bit of content and someone might see it down the line. Whereas Instagram, when you realistically scrolling back, every now and again, if you become a new fanboy of someone, you might scroll for ages. But like most of the time, you're looking at the last 2 weeks worth of content. So when you're a coach scared to put out a reel because you might not be perfect, or you think your graphic looks a bit rubbish, that'll disappear into the ether in no time at all.
Yeah. And I think it's the same with just like the content that you post. Like, if you feel like you've said something 6 months ago, you can post it again, because I can guarantee the person that either saw it 6 months ago has no idea you posted that. They've completely forgotten you posted that 6 months ago. And equally, the people that have been following you for the past month, 2 months, 3 months have never seen that piece of content because they would have not scrolled that far. So when you're creating your content, don't post it, delete it. Post it, store it on a hard drive somewhere, keep hold of it. And if you can, just sort of see how it performed when you posted like 6 months ago. Oh, that performed really well. I'm going to repost that again now because that performed well. My current audience hasn't seen that piece of content. As long as you don't look too different. For example, let's say in that scenario, you were in, I don't know, you were in another country, and then, or you're like in Dubai right now and you're in England, that one, and then you post it randomly amongst all of the content where you're currently in Dubai. And there's this one where you're in like rainy England, it will look weird. So maybe consider those sort of things. But if it's just the same piece of content and you're in the same room, same environment, feel free to repost it because they wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, I think even so, if it's valuable, I've got content I filmed at my gym when I was in Hong Kong that I posted recently. It's like I have a Reels database of stuff that's done well and it's edited, and they're like, if I get caught out for whatever reason, I've got that there. The gym floor footage, right? Like, if it's valuable, it's valuable. I kind of get it if you look completely different and you're fat and you're in a different country and you're outside, but it's like, people will forget about it. So
They will.
there's one more question I always ask every guest at the end of every show, and it's because people will look at podcast guests and they get podcast guests on because they're people they respect, they're people they do well, that they have this polish to what they've done. And we mentioned this with Your Unfair Advantage. And people think they're always living up to that. And I want to show that no one has their shit together. It's idiots all the way up. So name me one thing that you've changed your mind on. This could be work-related or it could be life-related.
One thing that I've changed my mind on. I think... Oh, there? Oh.
No, go on.
I think the one thing that I've changed my mind on is the level of financial success I want my business to have. I think early doors when I was growing a business, so when it was the videography business, primarily, it was grow as much as humanly possible. Whereas now I'm like, I know the amount I've literally gone. I think when I was going through that burnout stage, I was like, okay, how much do I need to actually just do the things that I want to do on a daily basis? And how much of my time am I willing to give up? I think over that 1 year that I feel like I lost, I found a lot more valuable in just wanting time. So like, for example, for my 30th birthday, my girlfriend was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I just want to spend time with people. There's nothing I want. There's nothing like I want to go do. I just want time with people and to be away from work and that. And I think over the years, I've wanted to build like this agency where I have employees and so on and so forth. And I've realized I don't want that. I want to work as little as possible and get as much and have as much of my own time back, but have enough money where I can go do the things that I want. I don't want these millions. A Porsche is the exact same as a VW Polo. Doesn't sound the same, doesn't go as fast, but it serves the exact same purpose. Now, if I get to that financial position where I can have a Porsche, then fine. But I'm not striving because I want one. It's because I can have one.
Yes.
So I think that's the most important thing. I now value time more than I do financial gain. And
I think that's the answer I've most resonated with out of anyone that's come and said the same thing. Because in this similar thing, same burnout perspective, I came to that same conclusion of like, I wanted to have this millions. I want to be able to even typical lad status stuff, show off with stuff, and then have staff and have my own gym. And I went, I don't want to order toilet roll. I don't want a gym, and I don't want staff. I don't want to be responsible for paying someone's rent and wages. That's a pressure that would take so much of my energy that I want something like, as you said, like it allows me to spend time with my partner, have a bit more flexibility, maybe of where I work, to being always working with clients at different times, like a PT was. And I remember, and I've ironically have it here, for years, as being a big James Bond fan, I wanted one of these. For people that can't see this, this is an Omega Seamaster. That was the watch from No Time to Die. This is about $6,000. And before you think, oh, that's a flex, Simon, that you can make $6,000, this was from a man who has a briefcase in Vietnam. Please don't come and take away my favorite watch. And the moment I bought that, and it worked, and it still, I scared the shit out of this man, but he said, will it work long term? And he goes, yeah, it'll work. Good quality. I went, well, I'll be back in 6 months. And he was like, yeah, no problem. I went back in 6 months with my mum and dad, and I saw him there, and I just forcefully tapped my hand on his shoulder and went, you know, I said I'd be back. And I went, don't worry, it still works. But as soon as I said that, and I was like, the amount of people that come up, because, oh, is that an Omega? No one knows the difference. No one cares. But I never blag. I always tell them, oh, but it's fake, because I clearly have this complex of being rich. But it was like, it doesn't matter. My life hasn't changed because people think I have an Omega watch. In the same way, for yourself as having a Porsche, people might look at you in the street, but if you're driving 1 mile an hour around London, what difference does it make? And if I can have something where my business may make that, but I probably will want to still pay myself roughly the same salary out the business then and now. If it makes that, I'm going to reinvest that into things on the portal, or maybe paying for you one-to-one rather than being your group product, and an editor and a videographer. It's stuff that allows me to do more of that stuff. And if I end up earning $1 million, it's not because I want to be a millionaire. It's because that's now where the business has got to be able to pay me, and that is it.
Yeah, I think I'm saying it's more just, if I was to summarize what I was trying to say, it's more I found that time is the most valuable thing for me now. And that's not because I've done 30 and I'm like, oh my God, time. It's just like, it's the thing that I value most. And I want to build a business whereby I can continue to get more of that back. I don't want to continue taking things away. I want to get more back. So if I'm in a point where I can hire an editor, that's several hours of my week back. Now, the goal isn't to then fill that time. It's just, cool, I've got those hours back now. And that's just the goal. It's to continue to build a business, yes, but how much of it can I outsource to a point where the quality's still there, I haven't got a bunch of employees, and I'm just continue saving back my time.
Yeah, I love that. And this has been a really, really interesting chat, and a lot of actionable stuff, and a great insight into the man behind this that has the unfair advantage and the hard work that's gone into having that. So thank you very much. As your time is so valuable, I'm very honored that you've allowed me to have 90 minutes of it for this. So for people who want to learn about what you do, and maybe jump into your products and programs, which in a week I'm already getting immense value from, tell me a little bit about that, and where can people find you?
Primary platforms would be Instagram and YouTube. So Instagram is Andy H Visuals, and YouTube is just Andy Hillocks. That is where I give all of my value, and I try and teach and educate coaches how to create better content to drive clients, leads into their business. So that's sort of the main focus. With regards to what I have to offer beyond all the free content, my main focus is primarily on my membership and my one-to-one coaching. So one-to-one coaching currently isn't available. I've tried to open that quarterly, and it's very hands-on. So I don't have many spaces. I'm not one of these coaches where I'm coaching sort of 50 to 100 people. It's typically 5 to 10 people in one go, because it is that hands-on approach. So I think the best resource for the majority of coaches is going to be my membership, where essentially is my aim for it is to be the one-stop hub for everything content related. If you have a content question, that's where you go. And that's the goal for it. So that's where, if people need help with their content, that's where they need to go.
Awesome. Well, I'll absolutely put that in the show notes. It's absolutely well deserved. It's probably the most binge watchable content on Instagram in the last 6 months. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.